I'm your host, Jenny, and today we're starting a very special full guideline on IELTS English listening practice and how to learn English the right way. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe because in this full lesson series, I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know about the IELTS listening test, from understanding the structure and question types to learning smart strategies and daily habits that will help you improve your listening skills quickly and confidently. So, get comfortable, grab your notebook, and let's start this learning journey together. Now, first of all, let's understand what IELTS listening actually is and why it's such an important part of the test. The IELTS listening section is designed to check how well you can understand spoken English in different situations. For example, a conversation between two people, an academic lecture, or some kind of informational talk like a student asking for details about a course. It doesn't just test your ability to hear words, it also checks how well you can catch meaning, identify key points, understand tone, and follow ideas when people speak naturally. And that's exactly what makes this section tricky for many students, because it's not only about listening, it's about understanding. When you listen to someone speaking in English, your mind has to do many things at the same time. You have to recognize the words, remember what was said earlier, and also predict what might come next. In the IELTS test, this becomes even more challenging because you only hear the audio once. You can't pause, you can't rewind, and you can't ask the speaker to repeat. That's why your listening practice should train your brain to stay focused, calm, and ready to catch important information on the first try. Now, many learners ask me, Jenny, how can I get better at listening? I listen to songs, movies, and podcasts, but still I don't improve. The reason is that just listening passively is not enough. When you're doing IELTS practice, you need active listening. That means you must listen with purpose. For example, when you play an IELTS practice recording, try to guess what kind of situation it is before it even starts. Is it a formal conversation? A student and teacher? Two friends planning something? This helps your brain build a small picture in advance. Then, as you listen, you should focus on finding answers and identifying the main ideas, not trying to understand every single word. Because in real communication, native speakers often speak quickly, use linking sounds, and reduce words. You'll never catch every sound, and that's okay. What matters is that you understand the message. Let's take a small example to understand this. Imagine you hear someone say, "Hey, do you want to grab a coffee later?" Now, in written English, that's, "Do you want to grab a coffee later?" But in spoken English, it becomes faster and connected. Do you want to grab a coffee later? If you focus too hard on each word, you might get confused. But if you listen for meaning, you understand immediately that the person is inviting someone for coffee. That's the type of skill IELTS listening checks. Natural comprehension. The IELTS listening test has 4 sections. Each section becomes slightly more difficult than the previous one. The first one is usually a casual conversation or information exchange, like someone booking a hotel or asking about transportation. The second one might be a short talk giving some factual information, for example, about a city, a company, or a public event. Then the third section usually involves 2 or more people discussing an academic topic, maybe students talking about an assignment. The final section is typically a monologue, such as a lecture or an academic speech. So as you move from one section to the next, the speed, vocabulary, and complexity increase. Each test has 40 questions, and you'll get about 30 minutes to listen, plus an extra 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet if you're taking the paper-based test. If you're doing the computer-based IELTS, you'll have just 2 minutes at the end to check your answers because you typed them directly on the screen. That's an important difference to remember. Now, let's talk about the question types. IELTS listening includes several different styles of questions. You might get multiple choice questions, form completion, sentence completion, matching, labeling a map or diagram, or short answer questions. The best way to handle them is to become familiar with the patterns. For example, in form completion tasks, you'll often hear details like numbers, names, dates, or addresses. So you must practice listening for specific information. On the other hand, multiple choice questions test your ability to understand meaning and identify the correct idea, not just catch a single word. Another common mistake learners make is reading the questions too slowly before the recording starts. Remember, IELTS always gives you time to look at the questions before each section. Use that time wisely. Don't just stare at them. Underline key words, predict what kind of information you'll need, and prepare your mind. For instance, if a question asks, "What is the man planning to do next weekend?" you know you need to listen for a future plan. That way, when you hear words like, "I'm thinking of going," or "we're planning to," your brain will immediately pay attention. Also, you should develop your note-taking skill. In IELTS listening, you don't have time to write full sentences. You just need quick notes, maybe keywords, short forms, or symbols that help you remember. For example, if you hear, "The lecture will be held at the main hall on Friday at 10 a.m., you could quickly jot down Friday 10 a.m. main hall. That's enough to remind you later. Another key part of listening is accent familiarity. IELTS uses a mix of English accents, mainly British, Australian, New Zealand, and sometimes North American. Many learners are comfortable with one accent, like American movies or songs, but they struggle when they hear British or Australian speakers. So I always suggest that you listen to a variety of accents daily. You can use BBC podcasts, Australian radio channels, TED Talks, or even YouTube videos. The more you expose your ears to different tones and pronunciations, the easier it becomes to catch meaning in the exam. Now, let's talk about practice routines. The most successful IELTS candidates I've seen are not the ones who study the hardest, but the ones who study the smartest. What does that mean? It means they practice consistently and purposefully. If you can do just 30 minutes of focused listening every day, it's better than 3 hours of distracted practice once a week. Start with short recordings and focus on understanding the main idea. Gradually, increase the length and complexity. After each listening, check the transcript if available and see what you missed. Write down the phrases or connected sounds that confused you and practice repeating them. This process will train your ear and your pronunciation together. When you practice, don't only rely on IELTS materials. Real-life English helps you much more. Watch English news, but with active listening, pause after every short section and repeat what you heard. Try shadowing. That means speaking along with the audio at the same time. This improves your rhythm, speed, and intonation naturally. You can also use audiobooks, podcasts, or even English YouTube channels with different accents. Another powerful trick is to change your listening environment. Many learners always study in silence, but the IELTS listening test is not silent. You'll hear background noise, echo, or multiple speakers. So sometimes practice in slightly noisy places to build concentration. For example, play recordings while you're on a bus or walking and try to focus on catching words even with distractions. It's like training your brain to stay alert under pressure. When it comes to vocabulary, don't just memorize long lists. Instead, learn in context. When you hear a new word, write the full sentence and notice how it's used. For example, if you hear "take part in a seminar," don't only memorize seminar, but also remember the phrase "take part in." This helps your listening because in the test, you often hear connected expressions, not single words. You should also pay attention to synonyms. IELTS loves to use them. For example, the question might say the cost of accommodation, but in the audio, the speaker says the price of staying. If you only focus on the word cost, you might miss the answer. So, train your brain to recognize meaning rather than exact words. Finally, let's talk about mindset. Many students get nervous because they think the IELTS listening test is about perfection. But the truth is, it's about balance. You don't need to understand every word. Even native speakers don't catch every single word in every situation. What matters is confidence, focus, and consistency. When you practice regularly, you'll start noticing small improvements every week. Maybe at first you'll get 20 out of 40, then 25, then 30. That progress shows your brain is learning. Celebrate those small wins. We're going to go deeper into the question types, common traps that confuse test takers, and smart strategies you can use to answer accurately even when the recording moves fast. So, if you've got your notebook ready, let's jump straight into it. When you sit for the IELTS listening test, you'll face different kinds of questions that test different listening skills. The first type you'll usually meet is form or note completion. In this type, you'll see an incomplete form, table, or set of notes, and you need to fill in the missing information. The answers could be numbers, names, addresses, times, or short pieces of information. For example, the question might say, customer name, underscore, 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 underscore. When the audio plays, you might hear something like, yes, that's right. My name is Michael Green, spelled G-R-E-N. So the answer is Michael Green. But here's the catch. Sometimes the speakers give extra or misleading information. They might say something like, it was under my husband's name last time, James Green, but this time please book it under mine, Michael Green. If you write James, you lose the mark. So, the golden rule is, always listen until the speaker clearly confirms the final piece of information. Don't rush to write down the first thing you hear. The second type is multiple choice questions. These can be a bit tricky because the options often sound similar. You might have to choose one correct answer out of 3, or sometimes 2 answers out of 5. What makes this difficult is that the audio might mention all the options, but only one is correct based on meaning. Let's imagine the question is, why did the woman choose to move to the countryside? The options are, A, she wanted a bigger house, B, she changed her job, C, she wanted to be closer to her family. Now in the recording, you might hear something like, well, I was offered a job in the city, but it meant living in a small apartment. I really wanted a place where my children could play outside, and my parents also live nearby, so it just made sense. The correct answer is C, but notice that the speaker also mentioned job and bigger place, which relate to the other options. This is how IELTS tests your understanding. They use similar words but different meanings. That's why it's so important to focus on the idea, not the word match. Next, we have matching questions. These require you to connect a list of options with items in the recording, for example, matching people to opinions or events to locations. The best way to handle this type is to look at all the options before the audio starts and predict what you'll hear. When the speakers start talking, quickly note any keywords that help you match. For instance, if you're matching speakers with their favorite activities, listen for expressions like, I really enjoy, I'm not a fan of, or I prefer. These small phrases are clues that guide you to the correct match. Then there are map and diagram labeling tasks. These look scary at first, but they're actually quite logical. You'll usually hear directions like turn left, next to, behind, or opposite. The trick here is to imagine yourself standing inside the map. Try to visualize the speaker's direction in your mind. For example, if they say, the library is opposite the cafeteria, quickly locate the cafeteria on the map and mark the opposite space. And always pay attention to the starting point. IELTS will tell you something like, you are here, and everything in the recording will be described from that position. So, keep your eyes moving with the audio and don't panic if you lose one answer. Just refocus and move on to the next. Another common task is sentence completion. Here you'll hear a recording and complete a sentence using 1, 2, or 3 words. Always check the word limit carefully. If it says no more than 2 words or a number, and you write 3 words, even if they're correct, you'll lose the mark. So, always write exactly within the limit. Also, be careful with grammar. The answer must fit grammatically into the sentence. For example, if the question says, the course begins in underscore, 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 and you write March, it's correct. But if you write in March, it becomes grammatically wrong because in is already there. So read carefully and check what fits naturally. Now, let's talk about short answer questions. These test your ability to pick out specific details from the recording. The question might ask, what time does the train leave? Or where will meeting take place? The key here is focus. Don't get distracted by extra information. Sometimes the speaker will mention several options before giving the final one. For example, I thought the train was leaving at 10, but it's actually rescheduled to 10:30. The answer is 10:30. Remember, IELTS loves to test your ability to change your mind as you listen. Now that we've talked about question types, let's move to the part that really makes the difference between a Band 6 and a Band 8 listener, understanding traps. IELTS audio recordings are full of traps because they want to test whether you're listening carefully or just catching words. One common trap is self-correction. The speaker says something, then immediately changes it. Like, the museum opens at 9. Oh, wait. Sorry, it's 9:30 on weekends. If you write 9, you'll be wrong. The second trap is similar words. The question might say, what is the woman's occupation? And in the audio, you hear, her father's a doctor, but she's studying to become a nurse. If you catch doctor, you might think that's the answer, but it's actually nurse. That's why context is everything. Another listening trap is paraphrasing. IELTS rarely uses the same words in the question and the audio. If the question says reason for choosing the course, the audio might say, I enrolled because I wanted to improve my career options. You must train yourself to recognize that enrolled because means reason for choosing. To get better at this, you can practice paraphrase recognition. Write a list of common IELTS words like reason, price, advantage, problem, and then find 3 or 4 ways to say them. For example, advantage could be benefit, positive point, or plus. The more you know, the easier it will be to connect ideas in the test. One thing that often surprises students is that the answers always come in order in each section. That means the answer to question 5 will always come before the answer to question 6 in the recording. So even if you miss one, don't panic. Just keep listening, because the next answer is still ahead. But don't try to go back. If you lose focus trying to think about a missed answer, you'll probably miss the next one too. It's better to leave it blank and move on. You can guess it later. Now, let's talk about timing. The IELTS listening recording doesn't stop between questions. It moves continuously, so your timing is everything. Use the short pauses before each section to read ahead. When the speaker says, "Now you'll have some time to look at questions 11 to 15, that's your golden moment. Don't waste it. Scan the questions quickly, underline the keywords, and make a mental prediction about what kind of information you're going to hear: a name, a number, a place, or a reason. This mental preparation makes your brain more alert and helps you react faster when the real answer appears. Let's also talk about spelling, because it's a small detail that can cost easy marks. Every spelling must be correct. If you write February instead of February, it's wrong. The same goes for capital letters in proper nouns, names of people, cities, or countries. So, practice your spelling every day. Make a list of common words from IELTS listening tests like accommodation, environment, transportation, advertisement, and practice writing them without looking. Many learners lose 1 or 2 marks just because of small spelling mistakes, and that can make the difference between Band 6.5 and Band 7. Now, pronunciation awareness is also very important. In the audio, you might hear 15 and 50, and they can sound similar. Pay attention to stress, 15 versus 50. Similarly, 14 and 40 can be confusing. The only way to fix this is through constant exposure and repetition. Try listening to native speakers saying numbers, addresses, and telephone digits. Practice repeating them until your ear naturally catches the stress difference. There's also a technique I teach all my students called anticipation listening. This means predicting what kind of answer you'll hear before it comes. For example, if the question says the man's favorite subject is underscore, 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 you already know the answer will be a school subject, like math or history. So, your brain is ready. That way, when you hear "I've always been fascinated by history," you can immediately fill in the answer without hesitation. Let's also talk about how to review your practice tests. After you finish a practice listening test, don't just check your score and move on. Go back, listen again, and read the transcript carefully. Mark every word you missed, and ask yourself why you missed it. Was it pronunciation? Was it speed? Was it a trap? This is how you improve. Each mistake teaches you something new about your listening habits. I also recommend keeping a listening diary. Every time you practice, write down 3 things: what you listened to, what you learned, and what confused you. Over time, you'll start seeing patterns. Maybe you often miss numbers, or maybe you always lose focus after 2 minutes. Once you know your weakness, you can fix it directly. And please, don't forget the emotional part of learning. Listening in a foreign language is tiring. Sometimes you'll feel frustrated. That's normal. But remember, improvement comes slowly at first, then suddenly. One day, you'll notice that you can follow a full English podcast or movie without subtitles, and you'll realize how far you've come. The key is consistency, not perfection. I want to focus on something extremely important: how to practice effectively using real test simulation, how to improve your focus and note-taking under time pressure, and how to connect your listening skill with your speaking practice so your English grows naturally in both directions. So, take a deep breath, relax, and let's go step by step through this together. When students prepare for IELTS listening, many of them think they're practicing properly just by doing random audio exercises or listening to English shows. But the truth is, for IELTS success, you need exam-like practice. That means you have to simulate the real test environment as closely as possible. Why is that important? Because the IELTS test is not only about your listening skill, it's about your ability to stay calm and focused while being tested. You have to manage stress, follow instructions quickly, and write answers without losing concentration. So, the first thing I always tell my students is, practice like it's the real thing. That means sitting down with a full listening test, 40 questions, one complete audio, no pauses, no rewinds, and complete silence around you. Pretend you're in an actual exam room. Keep your phone away, close all other tabs, and just focus. At first, this might feel difficult. You might lose concentration halfway or start worrying about missed answers. But that's okay. That's how real test training feels. After 2 or 3 full practice tests, you'll notice your concentration getting stronger, and you'll be able to stay alert for the full 30 minutes. It's like going to the gym for your brain. Each full practice strengthens your mental endurance. And this is something most learners forget. Listening is not only about your ears, it's about your brain's stamina. Now, one big mistake people make during test simulation is not using answer transfer time effectively. In the paper-based IELTS, you get 10 extra minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. Many students relax and think they have plenty of time, but when they start writing, they panic. So, you must practice that transfer process too. Write neatly, check spelling, and make sure the answers match the correct question numbers. If you're taking the computer-based IELTS, remember that you'll have only 2 minutes at the end. So you should type quickly and check each answer as you go. During practice, try both methods so you're comfortable with whichever format you'll take. Now, let's talk about focus, because this is something that decides your score more than anything else. Many students know the vocabulary and understand English, but still lose answers because their mind wanders during the audio. It's very normal. Our attention naturally drops after a few minutes. To fix this, you can train your focus in small steps. For example, start with short recordings, 1 minute, then 2 minutes, then 5. Try to listen without any distraction and recall everything you heard. Write a short summary after each listening. This exercise will gradually extend your concentration time. You can also challenge yourself by listening to something longer each week. Maybe a 5-minute podcast on Monday, a 10-minute documentary on Wednesday, and a full IELTS section on Friday. Your brain will slowly adapt to stay focused for longer periods. Another trick to build concentration is to understand listening signals. These are small words or phrases that speakers use to organize their ideas. For example, when you hear firstly, on the other hand, to summarize, or however, Those are like road signs that tell you where the speaker's idea is going. In the IELTS test, if you recognize these signal words, you can anticipate what's coming next. For example, if you hear, however, you know the speaker is about to change direction. That helps you refocus quickly even if you were about to lose attention. Now, let's move to note-taking because this is one of the most practical skills you can develop for IELTS listening. Many students ask me, "This tiny line already captures the meaning." Use arrows, symbols, and abbreviations. For example, ENV for environment, Gov for government, EDU for education. Your notes are personal. They only need to make sense to you. Practicing note-taking outside IELTS helps too. Try listening to YouTube lectures, podcasts, or news reports and write short notes while listening. After that, pause and summarize what you heard from your notes. This improves both your comprehension and memory. You'll also notice that the more you practice note-taking, the more confident you become during real IELTS listening because your brain starts picking up key ideas automatically instead of trying to understand everything word by word. One important aspect of listening practice is managing stress. When you're nervous, your mind goes blank and you miss details. The best way to stay calm is to build a routine that your brain recognizes as test time. For example, always sit in the same position, use the same earphones, keep a bottle of water near you, and take a few deep breaths before starting. Doing this regularly during practice will tell your brain that this situation is normal, not scary. When you walk into the real IELTS test room, you'll feel much more comfortable because you've done it before many times at home. Another powerful exercise is mindful listening. Before you press play on any recording, close your eyes and take 2 slow breaths. Tell yourself, "I'm going to focus only on what I hear for the next few minutes." Then start the audio and keep your full attention there. If your mind starts to drift, gently bring it back. It's a small mental exercise, but it makes a big difference over time. Your focus becomes sharper, and you start catching small details you used to miss. Now, let's talk about connecting listening and speaking. Many learners think these are separate skills, but in real life, they're closely linked. When you listen, your brain collects patterns of pronunciation, rhythm, and natural expressions. When you speak, you reproduce those patterns. So if you improve your listening, your speaking automatically improves too. That's why one of the best listening practices is shadowing, speaking along with the recording. Choose a short IELTS audio or a YouTube video with clear English. Play a few sentences and try to repeat them at the same time as the speaker. At first, it's difficult, but after a few days, you'll notice your pronunciation and intonation becoming more natural. You'll also start recognizing how native speakers link words together. For example, going to becomes gonna, wanna becomes wanna. Recognizing these patterns helps you catch them easily in IELTS listening. Another great way to connect listening and speaking is by doing retelling exercises. After listening to a short recording, pause it and explain in your own words what you just heard. It doesn't have to be perfect. The goal is to recall and express the key ideas. For example, if you listen to a clip about city pollution, you can say, "The speaker said that pollution in cities is increasing because of more cars and factories, and people should use public transport more often." By doing this, you strengthen both your memory and your speaking fluency. Now, let's discuss how to use everyday English exposure as part of your listening training. IELTS listening is based on real-life situations, so the more you surround yourself with English in daily life, the more natural it will feel. Change your phone's language to English. Listen to English radio while cooking or play English podcasts during your walk. Even if you don't understand everything, your brain is learning the rhythm and sound of the language. Over time, this builds intuition. You start predicting what words or phrases might come next, and that's exactly what strong listeners do. Another method that works beautifully is topic-based listening. IELTS often repeats similar themes: education, health, environment, travel, technology, society. Each topic has its own vocabulary. For example, if you listen to a podcast about education, you'll hear words like curriculum, assignment, academic, lecture. The more you listen to content around these topics, the faster you'll recognize them during the test. You can create a weekly plan, maybe Monday for education, Tuesday for travel, Wednesday for technology, Thursday for health, Friday for environment, and so on. Each day, listen to short recordings related to that theme. Now, let's talk about how to handle fast speakers. Many IELTS recordings use natural speed, and sometimes you'll feel that the speakers are just too quick. The secret is not to panic. Don't try to translate in your head. It slows you down. Instead, train yourself to understand the idea group rather than each word. When a speaker says, "We decided to postpone the meeting until next Monday because the manager is away," you don't have to understand postpone right away if you catch meeting next Monday. Context gives meaning. You can also use playback speed control when practicing. Start with 0.8x speed and gradually move to normal 1.0x. This helps your ears adapt slowly. When you practice IELTS listening tests, make sure you review not only the mistakes but also the right answers. Ask yourself why you got them correct. What helped you notice that answer? Was it a keyword, a phrase, or tone of voice? This reflection helps you build awareness of what works for you personally. Every learner's brain listens differently. Some rely more on tone, others on vocabulary. Knowing your style helps you focus your preparation. It's also good to practice multi-speaker listening because IELTS recordings often include conversations between 2 or 3 people. You can train this skill by watching short talk shows or interviews with multiple guests. Try to follow who's saying what. Pay attention to how speakers take turns, how they agree or disagree, how they pause. For example, one speaker might say, "I completely agree," while another adds, "Yes, but I think." These signals help you follow the flow in real IELTS recordings where speakers might interrupt or correct each other. Another practical exercise is dictation training. Choose a 1-minute clip and write down exactly what you hear. It's slow work, but it improves your listening accuracy like nothing else. You can do it a few times per week. First, listen and write what you catch. Then, check with the transcript and note what you missed. Over time, your ear becomes more sensitive to small sounds like s, ed, or ing endings. That's extremely helpful for listening questions that depend on singular and plural forms. Let's talk about time management during the test. You'll always hear a short introduction before each section. Use that moment to read the questions quickly. Never stare into space during that time. It's precious. Also, remember that IELTS recordings usually give a short break halfway through each section. Something like, "You now have some time to check questions 6 to 10. Don't waste that time either. Immediately start previewing the next set of questions. That's how you stay one step ahead of the recording. Now, before we wrap up this part, I want to share something very important about attitude. Sometimes, after several practice tests, students get discouraged because they're stuck at the same score. They say, "Jenny, I keep getting 26 or 27 out of 40. I don't see progress." And I always tell them that plateau is normal. It means your brain is reorganizing the new skills. Keep going, and you'll suddenly notice a jump. But only if you stay patient and consistent. The key is daily listening. Even 20 minutes a day makes a big difference when done consciously. So, let me summarize our learning from this part. You learned how to practice with real test simulations, how to strengthen focus through mindful and gradual exercises, how to take notes smartly, how to link listening with speaking through shadowing and retelling, and how to use daily English exposure to make your skills natural. Each of these habits builds a solid foundation for IELTS success and for real-world English communication too. We'll talk about the two most powerful methods that every successful English learner uses: intensive listening and extensive listening. These two words might sound big, but don't worry. I'll explain them in simple language, and you'll see how both of them can completely change the way you learn and understand English. Let's start with intensive listening. This is what I call the deep practice. It's like when you zoom in on a small part of a picture to see every little detail. Intensive listening is when you take a short piece of audio, maybe just 1 or 2 minutes long, and you study it carefully. You listen again and again, you look at the transcript, you write down what you hear, and you repeat it until you understand every single sound. It's not about quantity, it's about quality. When you practice this way, you teach your brain to catch small sounds, to notice pronunciation, and to connect words the way native speakers do. Let's take an example. Suppose you have a short IELTS listening clip about someone booking a hotel. You play it once, and maybe you understand only 60%. That's okay. Now you play it again, but this time, focus on one sentence at a time. Pause after each sentence and repeat what you heard. Try to write it down word for word. If you miss something, play it again. This is how you train your ear. After you finish, read the transcript and compare. You'll probably find that some words sounded very different from what you expected. That's because English pronunciation often changes in fast speech. Native speakers connect words, drop sounds, and use rhythm to speak naturally. Intensive listening helps you hear those differences and slowly get used to them. Another powerful trick you can use with intensive listening is called shadowing. You've heard me mention this before, but let's go a bit deeper now. Shadowing means speaking along with the audio at the same time. You listen to the recording and try to copy the pronunciation, rhythm, and speed exactly like the speaker. It feels difficult at first, but it's an amazing way to train your brain to understand and produce natural English sounds. When you shadow, your mouth, ears, and brain all work together, and your listening improves much faster than with passive listening. You can do this with IELTS recordings, YouTube videos, podcasts, or even English songs if you like. The important thing is to choose short and clear clips, not too long, so you can repeat them many times. Now, let's talk about extensive listening. This is the opposite of intensive listening. It's when you listen to a lot of English without stopping too much. You don't focus on every single word. You just listen for the main ideas, the feelings, and the overall meaning. This is what I call the big picture practice. When you listen extensively, your brain learns to understand English naturally, the same way a child learns their first language, by hearing it again and again in different contexts. You might not understand everything, but that's okay. The goal is to enjoy the process and get used to how English sounds in real life. Let's imagine you're walking to school or cooking dinner. You can play an English podcast or a YouTube video in the background. Maybe it's a travel story, an interview, or even a short documentary. You don't need to stop or take notes. Just let your ears get familiar with the rhythm. When you hear new words often, they slowly become part of your memory. One day, you'll hear a word and suddenly realize, hey, I know that. That's the power of extensive listening. It works quietly in the background while you go about your day. Both types of listening, intensive and extensive, are important. Think of it like learning to play music. Intensive listening is when you practice one song slowly and carefully, again and again, until it's perfect. Extensive listening is when you listen to many different songs to understand styles, rhythm, and emotion. If you only do one type, your growth will be slow. But when you combine both, you build deep understanding and wide exposure at the same time. That's what makes you a confident listener. Now, you might ask me, Jenny, how much time should I spend on each? The answer depends on your goal. If you're preparing for IELTS, I suggest spending a bit more time on intensive listening at first because the test requires accuracy. You need to catch small details like numbers, dates, names, and specific information. But don't forget extensive listening because it helps you stay relaxed and improves your overall comprehension. For example, you could do 30 minutes of intensive practice and then 30 minutes of relaxed listening every day. That's just an idea. You can adjust it based on your schedule. Let's talk about how to choose the right materials. For intensive listening, pick short, clear audios, IELTS recordings, short news clips, or educational videos with subtitles. The shorter the better, because you'll listen many times. For extensive listening, choose things you actually enjoy. If you love travel, listen to travel vlogs. If you like cooking, watch cooking shows. If you enjoy learning about history or science, find podcasts in those topics. The key is to listen to something interesting so you stay motivated. Remember, learning English doesn't have to be boring. When you love what you hear, your progress doubles. Another very helpful exercise is dictation. Dictation means listening and writing what you hear word by word. It's a powerful way to train your ears and mind. You can take a 1-minute recording, play it, and try to write everything exactly. Don't worry if it's hard at first. Even native speakers find dictation difficult. But if you do it regularly, your listening accuracy will improve a lot. You'll start recognizing sounds you used to miss. Now, let's talk about mindset again, because it's very important. When you do intensive listening, it's normal to feel tired or frustrated. You might think, I've listened 5 times and still don't understand. But that's exactly when you're learning. Your brain is adjusting to new sounds. Each time you listen, it understands a bit more. Think of it like peeling an onion. With every layer you remove, you see more clearly. Don't expect perfection right away. Patience and repetition are your best friends. And when you do extensive listening, don't stress about not understanding everything. In real life, even native speakers don't catch every single word. Focus on understanding the general idea. The more you listen, the more your brain fills in the gaps naturally. Over time, you'll notice you're understanding more and more without trying so hard. A great way to make your listening practice more powerful is to mix it with speaking and writing. After listening to something, talk about it out loud or write a short summary in your notebook. When you express what you heard, you force your brain to process the information deeply. This helps you remember new vocabulary and sentence structures better. You can even record yourself speaking about what you heard and then listen back. Compare your pronunciation with the original audio. This makes your listening and speaking improve together. Another tip I give my students is to create a listening habit tracker. It's simple. Take a notebook or make a small chart and write down what you listen to each day. It could be IELTS Part 3 practice test, BBC short story, or English podcast. Then, write one new word or phrase you learned from it. This small daily routine keeps you consistent and motivated because you can see your progress. Let me also share a small secret that language experts know. Variety is key. If you listen to only one accent or one type of recording, your ears get too comfortable. But IELTS and real life are full of surprises. You'll hear British, American, Australian, and sometimes even mixed accents. So try to listen to different sources every week. For example, one day a British podcast, another day an American interview, another day an Australian video. That variety will make your listening flexible and strong. Now, imagine yourself a few weeks from now. You've been doing intensive listening every day, repeating short clips, shadowing, writing what you hear. You've also been doing extensive listening, watching English shows, listening to podcasts while relaxing. Suddenly, you notice something amazing. You can understand more English than ever before. Words that used to sound fast or unclear now make sense. That's the magic of consistent listening. You didn't memorize lists or grammar rules. You just trained your ears and brain naturally. Sometimes students ask me, "Jenny, what if I don't have time?" My answer is simple. Use small moments. You don't need hours every day. You can listen while traveling, doing chores, or waiting somewhere. Even 5 or 10 minutes add up. Remember, your ears don't take breaks. They can learn anywhere, anytime. Let's also talk a bit about confidence. Many learners feel shy or nervous because they think their listening is weak. But here's the truth. Everyone starts from zero. The difference between a beginner and a confident listener is not talent, it's habit. The more you listen, the more confident you become. When you walk into the IELTS test room, you'll feel calm because you've trained for it like an athlete trains for a race. So, to summarize this part in simple words, intensive listening helps you build strong accuracy, and extensive listening helps you build natural fluency. Together, they make you unstoppable. You don't need to choose one. You need both. Balance them like food for your brain. One gives strength, the other gives energy. We're going to talk about how to learn vocabulary in a smart, natural, and lasting way, not by memorizing long lists, but by living with the language. Let's be honest, when most people think about learning English words, they open a notebook, write down a bunch of new words with meanings, and then try to memorize them. Maybe they look at them once or twice and forget them after a few days. That's not your fault. That's just how human memory works. Your brain doesn't like random, disconnected information. It remembers what feels real, emotional, or meaningful. That's why when you learn words in context, through listening or stories or conversations, they stay longer in your memory. So, the first big idea I want you to understand is this. Stop studying words like numbers in a list. Start learning them as living parts of sentences and sounds. That's what will make you fluent and confident. Let's take an example. Imagine you're listening to a short IELTS recording about a student talking to a librarian. You hear the word borrow. If you just memorize borrow means to take something for a short time, you'll probably forget it soon. But if you hear it in a sentence, can I borrow this book for a week? Your brain connects the word with a real situation. You hear the speaker's tone, the rhythm, and the way it fits in the conversation. The next time you hear borrow in another context, your brain will instantly recognize it. That's how natural learning works. Listening is a powerful tool for vocabulary because it gives you the sound, emotion, and rhythm behind the word. You're not just learning spelling, you're learning life. When you hear a new word, don't rush to translate it. Instead, pause and think. What's happening in the scene? What could that word mean? Even if you don't understand at first, your brain will make guesses. That's how children learn languages. They guess meaning through repetition and experience. Over time, the guesses become understanding. Another secret to building strong vocabulary is repetition, but not boring repetition. I'm talking about smart repetition. When you learn a new word, don't just look at it once. Try to hear it, see it, and use it in different ways. For example, if you learn the word recommend, listen to how it's used in different contexts. I recommend this restaurant. Can you recommend movie? And my teacher recommended a great book. Hearing the same word in multiple situations helps your brain remember it naturally. You don't even need to force it. The repetition will do the work for you. Now, let's connect vocabulary with listening practice. Every time you do an IELTS listening exercise, you can build a mini vocabulary list from it. After you finish listening, write down words that were new or interesting to you. Don't just write the meaning, write the sentence you heard them in. Then listen again and repeat that sentence out loud. That way, you're training both your vocabulary and pronunciation at the same time. When you later hear the same word in another recording, your brain will light up and say, I know that one. You can also make your own personal vocabulary notebook or digital flashcards. But here's a tip. Instead of writing only meanings, add 3 things: a sentence, a short note about the situation, and maybe a small picture or memory. For example, for the word destination, you could write, we arrived at our destination after 2 hours. In the IELTS test, it was a travel conversation. Adding context makes your brain connect the word with an image or feeling, and that makes memory stronger. Now, let's talk about pronunciation and listening. Many learners can read and recognize English words, but they don't understand them when they hear them.
Why?
Because the spoken form sounds different. Think of words like comfortable, which sounds like comfortable, or Wednesday, which sounds like Wednesday. If you only study vocabulary by reading, you miss the real sound. That's why listening is such an important part of learning new words. Always try to hear how native speakers pronounce new vocabulary. You can use YouTube, online dictionaries with audio, or your IELTS recordings. Listen and repeat until your mouth feels comfortable saying it. The more you can say it correctly, the easier it will be to recognize it in listening tests. A great way to improve both vocabulary and listening is by doing something called word spotting. While listening to any English audio, try to focus on 1 or 2 specific words you want to notice. For example, if you're learning travel vocabulary, listen for words like flight, check-in, departure, and destination. When you hear them, mark them in your notes. This kind of focused listening trains your ear to pick up words quickly during IELTS exams. Let me share another helpful method: topic-based learning. The IELTS listening test covers many different topics like education, environment, health, travel, and technology. So, build your vocabulary around these topics. Each week, choose one theme. For example, if your topic is education, listen to short clips about universities, lectures, or student life. Learn words like enroll, assignment, deadline, presentation, and tutor. Use them in sentences and try to hear them in other recordings. When you meet those words in the actual test, you'll understand them easily because your brain has already built a connection. You can also use stories or dialogues to learn words emotionally. When you feel something while learning, your memory gets stronger. If you hear a touching story or a funny dialogue, you'll remember the words from that situation. That's why I often tell learners to listen to English that makes them feel something: laughter, curiosity, excitement, even sadness. Emotions are like glue that stick words to your brain. Now, here's another tip. Don't learn too many new words at once. Some students try to memorize 50 or 100 words a day, but that never lasts. It's better to learn 5 or 10 words deeply than 100 words shallowly. When you learn fewer words but use them in many ways, listening, speaking, writing, they become part of your active vocabulary. You'll not only recognize them in IELTS, but also use them in daily life. Another important part of vocabulary learning is word families. In English, one root word can change into many forms. For example, decide, decision, decisive, and indecisive. When you learn one, learn the others too. It helps you understand how English words grow and connect. During listening tests, this can be very helpful because sometimes the question uses one form and the recording uses another. For example, the question might say the final decision, and the speaker says, "We decided to go." If you know the word family, you'll catch it easily. Let's talk about collocations too. Collocations are word pairs that usually go together. For example, we say make a decision, not do a decision. Or take a break, not do a break. These combinations are very common in IELTS listening and speaking. When you listen carefully, notice which words go together. Try to remember them as a pair, not as separate words. When you use collocations, your English sounds more natural and your listening becomes faster because your brain starts to expect common patterns.
You can make a small exercise from this.
Every time you listen to something, write down 2 or 3 collocations you hear. Later, try to use them in your own sentences or short stories. For example, if you hear take part in a project, write it down and later say, I took part in a school project. This way, you're recycling vocabulary in different skills: listening, speaking, and writing. Let's also talk about review. Learning vocabulary once isn't enough. You need to revisit it regularly so your brain keeps it fresh. A good schedule is reviewing after 1 day, 1 week, and 1 month. You don't need to spend a lot of time. Just read your notes, say the words aloud, or listen to something that uses them. Each time you review, your memory becomes stronger, and soon the words will stay forever. Now, I want to mention one more important thing: attitude. Many learners feel stressed about vocabulary. They say, I'll never remember all these words. But English isn't about knowing every word. It's about knowing enough to understand meaning. Even native speakers don't know all the words in their own language. So don't be afraid of not knowing everything. Focus on learning what you need and understanding the message. The goal of vocabulary learning is not perfection, it's communication. And when it comes to IELTS, you don't need to know rare or difficult words to get a good score. What matters is how well you understand common academic and everyday words, and how quickly you can connect meaning during listening. So, instead of chasing complicated vocabulary, focus on mastering the useful ones. You'll see how much easier the test feels. So, to wrap this part up, remember this. Vocabulary grows naturally when you listen daily, pay attention to words in context, and review them with meaning. Don't memorize for memory's sake. Learn for understanding. Every new word is like a friend. Meet it, listen to it, talk to it, and soon it becomes part of your life. You understand how the IELTS listening test works, how to train your ears, how to deal with accents, and how to build strong vocabulary. But here's the truth. Even if you know all the techniques in the world, you won't reach fluency unless you stay consistent. Learning English isn't something you do once and finish. It's something you grow with every day, like watering a plant. So today, let's talk about how to make English learning part of your daily life, how to stay motivated, and how to keep going even when you feel stuck. First, I want you to stop thinking about English as a school subject. Think of it as a lifestyle. You don't study English for 1 hour and forget it until tomorrow. You live with it. From the moment you wake up to the time you sleep, you can bring English into your world in small, simple ways. For example, when you wake up, you can think to yourself in English, "What do I have to do today?" When you're getting ready, you can listen to an English podcast or song. When you're on the bus or walking, you can describe things around you in English in your mind. You don't need to sit at a desk all the time. English can go with you everywhere. Now, let's talk about daily routines. Many learners ask me, "Jenny, how many hours should I study English every day?" And my answer is always the same. It's not about the number of hours. It's about consistency. Even 30 minutes a day is enough if you do it every day. The brain loves regular practice. When you study a little every day, your brain keeps the language fresh and active. But when you take long breaks, you forget, and it becomes harder to restart. So the secret is small steps, done daily. You can divide your time into short sessions, 10 minutes of listening, 10 minutes of speaking, 10 minutes of vocabulary review. Simple, balanced, and easy to maintain. And please remember, English is not only about books or exams. If you only prepare for IELTS questions, you'll get bored quickly. Mix it up. Watch a short movie clip, listen to an English YouTuber, talk to a friend online, or record your own short speech. Every activity you do in English counts. For example, watching a movie in English without subtitles might sound difficult, but it's one of the best listening exercises. Even if you understand only 50%, your brain is learning patterns, rhythm, and natural pronunciation. The more you expose yourself to real English, the more natural your listening will become. Now, let's talk about motivation. Motivation is like energy. Sometimes it's high, sometimes it's low. It's completely normal to have days when you feel tired, bored, or think you're not improving. I've seen many students quit just because they lost motivation for a few days.
Don't let that happen to you.
Instead, focus on building discipline. Discipline means doing what you need to do even when you don't feel like it. Think of it like brushing your teeth. You don't always enjoy it, but you still do it because it's important. Make English practice the same. Even on your lazy days, do something small. Maybe just listen to one short clip or review 5 words. That's enough to keep your habit alive. To keep your motivation strong, celebrate small wins. Maybe you understood a native speaker without subtitles. Maybe you remembered a difficult word in a conversation. Maybe you finished one full IELTS listening test without losing focus. Each of those moments is progress, and you should be proud of them. Write them down or say them out loud. Remind yourself that learning a language is a journey, not a race. Every small step brings you closer to your goal. Another tip is to set clear goals. Don't just say, "I want to improve my English." That's too general. Instead, say, "I want to understand English movies without subtitles," or "I want to score band 7 in IELTS listening." When you have a clear goal, you'll know where to focus your energy. You can even break it down into weekly targets. For example, this week I'll learn 20 new IELTS words, or I'll finish one listening test every 2 days. These small goals make big progress. Also, keep track of your progress. You can use a notebook, a digital app, or even just sticky notes on your wall. Every time you complete a task, mark it. It gives you a sense of achievement and reminds you that you're moving forward. Seeing your progress visually is a powerful motivator. Now, let's talk about environment. Your environment plays a big role in how you learn. If you're surrounded by distractions, noise, or negative energy, it's hard to focus. Try to create a calm and positive space for studying English. It doesn't have to be fancy, just a clean corner, your notebook, a cup of tea, and your favorite English playlist. Make that space your English zone. When you sit there, your brain will know it's time to focus and learn. But remember, learning doesn't only happen in quiet study sessions. It happens in life. Try to connect with people who speak English. Join online English groups, language exchange chats, or study partners. When you talk to others, you use the words you've learned, and that's when real learning happens. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. Mistakes mean you're learning. Every time you make one, you're discovering what to fix. Even native speakers make mistakes, so relax and speak freely. I also want to remind you about balance. Studying too hard without rest can make you tired and frustrated. Sometimes the best way to learn is to take a short break. Go for a walk, listen to music, or do something creative in English, like journaling or drawing while listening to an English story. Your brain processes information even when you're not studying. So rest is part of learning, not the opposite of it. When you face difficulties, maybe you can't understand a recording or you keep getting low scores, don't feel defeated. Every learner faces that stage. It means you're pushing your limits. When you struggle, it's a sign of growth. Keep going. Think of your English journey like climbing a mountain. The higher you go, the harder it gets, but the view gets better too. One day you'll look back and realize how far you've come. Another great way to stay motivated is by surrounding yourself with English. Change your phone's language to English. Follow English-speaking YouTubers, influencers, and teachers. Read social media posts in English. Even your entertainment, songs, movies, memes can become learning tools. The more you see and hear English daily, the faster it becomes part of your thinking. Also, don't forget to reward yourself. When you achieve a goal, maybe finishing this entire IELTS listening guide, treat yourself. Watch your favorite show, eat your favorite food, or take a day off. Rewards keep your brain happy and make learning more enjoyable. Now, if you ever feel like giving up, remember why you started. Maybe you want to study abroad, get a better job, or simply communicate confidently with people from around the world. Whatever your reason is, keep it close to your heart. Your why is your strongest motivation. Every time you feel tired, think of that reason and remind yourself that every small effort brings you closer to that dream. Learning English isn't about being perfect. It's about being brave enough to keep trying. You're not competing with anyone else. You're building your own story, step by step, word by word, day by day. And I promise you, if you stay consistent and keep learning with love and patience, English will become a natural part of you. You'll wake up one day and realize you don't need to translate in your head anymore. You'll understand people easily, express yourself freely, and feel confident wherever you go. So, as we end this full IELTS English listening practice and learning guide, I want you to remember this final message. Don't stop learning. Every day, do one small thing in English. Listen, read, speak, or write, even for 5 minutes. Small daily steps create big results over time. The secret to mastering English isn't studying harder, it's staying consistent longer. Thank you so much for joining me in this full journey. I hope this guide has inspired you to make English part of your everyday life. You have the power to improve. It's already inside you. Keep learning, keep listening, and keep believing in yourself. This is Jenny from English Lab, and I'll see you in the next video. Stay motivated, stay curious, and keep speaking English every single day. Goodbye, my friends, and happy learning!